Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters Net podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Today I welcome some special guests and some new blokes out of the UK. We got Nick and we got Dave from the band Luddites UK. How y'all doing today?
All right, thank you.
We're okay, yeah. We're struggling manfully on with various ailments, which comes with age, but we're here and we're very pleased to be here, Brian.
That's good to hear. I guess, which part of the UK are y'all hailing from? I got a good number of them already, so.
Sheffield, Northern UK, Steel City.
No, there's only one Steel City. That's Pittsburgh, out of the States.
Yeah, we can argue about that.
Probably.
It's Steel City, UK, anywhere, not USA, but Steel City, UK, yeah. It's famous for its steel, used to be.
It's also very famous for music.
Yes.
It's not a big city by American terms, for sure. But it's got a very proud musical history and heritage, which kind of started with Joe Cocker and went on from there. So we're a very small carbuncle on the overall body of music that Sheffield has produced and continues to produce.
It's always very quirky what Sheffield does. It's always kind of to its own beat, really.
Yeah.
That's one thing you can say about music from Sheffield. It's always got a peculiar twist somewhere or other.
But I think it's fair to say there wouldn't be electronic music as we know it if it wasn't for Sheffield. Because if you go back to the mid-70s, so even before the punk days, you had Cabaret Voltaire, and they're generally universally recognised as, having given birth to electronic music. And then shortly after that, you had the Human League, of course, not with the girls in the original Human League, which eventually split with the girls joining the Human League, and then the two other musicians becoming Heaven 17. So again, there's been a lot happened since then in Sheffield, but that kind of was fundamental in giving birth to electronic music.
That's something new. So yeah, I get a nice little history in there too. But was Sheffield also known for its underground metal scene too? Or is that more like Birmingham and closer to London?
We wouldn't know, quite honestly. It is famous for Def Leppard. Def Leppard are from Sheffield, but we certainly don't come across much in the way of metal. Do you know about much of that going on in town at the moment?
I know that there's a venue that does metal and does hardcore punk, but I've not actually been. But yeah, there is something, definitely. Yeah. Right. I've just not gone yet.
We tend to be on the quirkier edge of it. We're both old punks back from the original era of punk, although that's not necessarily always what we play anymore.
Well, go back to the Sex Pistol days. So yeah,
Pistols, Clash, X-Ray Specs, Ruts, to name but a few.
Well, another famous fact about Sheffield. The Clash actually played their first ever gig in Sheffield, supporting the Pistols at a venue which sadly, like too many of them, is no longer with us, which in those days was called the Black Swan, so was known in Sheffield as the Mucky Duck.
Yeah.
And it eventually became the Boardwalk. And when the Pistols set out on their ill-fated tour, and took the Clash with them as a support act, that was the first show of the tour. So as a venue, I think it held about 600, but you will find about 30,000 people in Sheffield who all swear they were there at that show.
If only we had an iPhone to catch something like that. So yeah.
Well, this was 1976, so no iPhones. But yeah, the first ever gig by the Clash.
outside of London.
It was their first gig, full stop.
Oh, I stand corrected, anyhow.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but that's so cool. So, hey.
We very much, both of us, come out of the punk scene from those days.
Yeah.
Punk is not dead. It's still alive in the UK. So, yeah. So.
Very much so, yeah.
It's an attitude and a state of mind, really, and you can't kill that. It don't die.
Just I forget about trying to kill rock and roll. Just you can't kill punk. That's their deal. So yeah. As you heard that song on Ozzy Osbourne, his own radio station, Ozzy's Boneyard, was playing "You Can't Kill Rock and Roll" as one of his songs. So.
Oh, you can't. You could never kill that while anybody's willing to get up and play it. It's going to live, and that's it, really.
Although Johnny Rotten famously said that punk is actually folk music. And I get where he's coming from with that, because it's telling the stories of the people. You know, at that time in the UK, Thatcher was shortly going to come to power, and the country was not in a good state at all. And there was plenty. There still is today, but you know, certainly then, you know, there was plenty to kick against and resist. So a lot of, certainly lyrically, a lot of punk music was recounting the stories of the people in the same way that historically folk has always done.
There's also an element of music hall in it, basically. There's a lot of music hall in punk. There really is.
Yeah.
There's definitely elements of music hall as well, which was basically cheap entertainment for the working classes back in the day, really.
Yeah.
And the Saturday night specials was the cussing on BBC. So, yeah.
That happens with Bill Grundy, yeah. Yeah. With Susie Sue stood just behind the band in the audience.
Just try to hold it in while Johnny Rott's just out there cussing on live TV. Yeah. I mean, he just knew. He did not care at all. So, man, huge props to him, by the way. So,
there were Mr. Grundy had piled them with drink, and Mr. Grundy were drunker than they were. So, you know, he was well oiled on that programme.
That explains a lot. So
I've just grabbed this and destroyed half of the studio doing it, but there we go. Mr. Lydon's autobiography. I can recommend it as a really good read to anybody who's got an interest in that era of music.
I'll say this is going to be like Wolf of Wall Street kind of crazy shit going on here, is it? So, a lot of cocaine and I guess a whole lot of inappropriate things we can't really discuss with the kids just yet. So.
I don't think there was a lot of cocaine around the Sex Pistols at all.
No, the drug of choice for the punks was amphetamines, was speed. That was the drug of the early punk rockers, yeah. Amphetamines, not coke. And sadly, at latter end, heroin.
Yeah.
Which is never, ever good. Ever, ever good. It's bad.
So Dave's the main songwriter for the band. We both do solo stuff as well. So I think you've come across some of mine as Nick Luddite, and Dave releases stuff as David Pascal.
Quite different.
So yeah, it's all very different. There's stuff that belongs to the band, and then stuff that clearly isn't going to fit with the bands. You know, we chuck out as solo stuff, but I think it's fair to say we're both musical obsessives, completely obsessed. We've both been doing it for a very, very long time, and between us, we write a hell of a lot of songs.
Let's say do tell, because I think one of your posts you were saying you set out a mission to write one song for every month in 2024.
No, that was the solo thing. Yeah, I'm not doing that again. Yeah, I released. I released. The last one comes out on the 31st, but I did 12 solo singles in the year. but that's on top of quite a few Luddites UK releases as well. So yeah, it was a busy old year for us. Next year will be different. I'm kind of pulling back from the solo stuff a bit to spend a lot more time doing Luddites UK, because we didn't do too many live shows last year, really, did we?
We did 4.
Right.
That's all.
That's poor.
Unfortunately, it's not good enough.
So next year is going to be about going out and playing live a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Huge. So, all right. So I guess let's start here, I guess, for the first question here, too. I guess, how'd you guys meet up? And I guess, what role do you all play in the band?
Well, that's a good question. I can't remember how I met Nick. Did I meet you through Mr. Sleaney, did I? Through Dave?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
A guy, Dave Sleaney, is also a musician on the scene. I was in a band with him very briefly, called The Inquiry. It did 6 gigs. This is going back 20 odd years now.
Yeah,
and I think you were at school with him, or you certainly lived in the same area of Sheffield.
I was at the same school. I was about 3 or 4 or 5 even years older than him. Yeah,
but he was also around the scene. He was a singer-songwriter, and a band got put together around that. And so I kind of met up with Dave when I was working with him, and we just completely hit it off, really, not just in musical terms, but also in kind of worldview, the sorts of books and films that we like, and everything else. So we ended up, Dave founded a band called Electric Luddites, which was a 5-piece band. And owing to events and circumstances, as of today, it's Luddites UK, and there are the two of us.
And so I play guitar and write lyrics, and program sometimes some songs. I can play keyboards very badly, which I do, but not live, just on computer. And Nick plays guitar and does stuff on computer as well. So yeah.
Although I was the bass player in Electric Luddites, I've now moved back to guitar, which is what I've always done, really. So that's how we came to be together.
That's pretty cool. So I guess, did you guys immediately jump into, I guess, the punk rock scene when you guys were young? I guess, did you try like working multiple jobs to make ends meet?
Oh, it's never been the full-time job for either of us.
No, never.
The only time I ever made decent money was playing in a covers band, which I did through the 1990s, and I hated it. But no, it's always been a kind of side thing for us.
Yeah, it's. I used to basically work just to buy equipment and play, and that's why I work basically. And so work very kindly provided with me lots of equipment and helped to buy guitars and things. So I did any work basically, as long as I could play music. Really,
it's really hard to make money these days anyway. The only way you can really do it is by playing live. But if you're a bit underground like we are in terms of what you do, we don't have a recognisable genre in terms of what we play at all, because it's not punk, but it's actually not really anything else either, and it draws from a whole load of global influences. And people don't tend to pay too much money to go and watch that. Not like some of the ticket prices we see for fairly average bands when we go out and watch gigs these days. So, and of course, Spotify have demonetised 80% of the acts that are on the platform. So even when you are making money from Spotify, it's a pittance. It's just pretty hard to make money. Although everything that we earn as a band goes to charity anyway. We don't. So we really don't do it for the money.
We don't do it. Definitely don't do it for money. It's all to local charities in Sheffield, and it's a way of helping out people who are less fortunate than ourselves. It's always been a personal ethos of mine. Even in Rootfish, we used to do lots of charity gigs, and I think it's important. And so I kind of carried things on with Nick. Because money that we do make is not great anyway. It's not much. You know.
Well, we're part of a movement over here called We Shall Overcome, and this came around at the time of the David Cameron and George Osborne government, where they basically slashed public spending to the point that public services disappeared. You know, well, all sorts went, and as by and large still gone. But homelessness went through the roof. It absolutely went through the roof.
And food bank use just grew and grew and grew.
Now, we are not a political band, and certainly not with a big P, so we're certainly not aligned to any party whatsoever.
No.
And I'm sure Dave will talk a bit more in a bit about what we are, but we're not a big P political band. But what WSO, the We Shall Overcome movement, did was to think, right, well, as artists, we need to start coming together and doing what little bit we can do to alleviate the real suffering we're seeing in our communities. Now, in terms of the artists that attach themselves to WSO, I would guess probably the only two that you'll probably be aware of were Billy Bragg and maybe the Men They Couldn't Hang. If you know the Men They Couldn't Hang. If you don't, you really should do. You will love them. But there's, you know, below them, in I suppose there isn't a hierarchy, but below them in terms of famousness, there are a huge number of acts. A guy called Joe Solo in particular, and a young lady called Jess Bent, all over the UK, that does a whole lot to raise money to house people and to feed people and all of these things now.
And we should mention Pauline Town. She's not a musician.
No.
She owns a pub called The Station, and it's in Ashton-under-Lyne, which is near Manchester, and it's kind of WSO central. So she helps a lot of homeless people. They feed a lot of homeless people, and also they liaise with the local organisations that are involved in helping the homeless. So she signposts them to that help. She's a major figure in WSO.
She got recognised by, as it still was then, the Queen as well. I don't think she was particularly impressed by it, but she got, was it an MBE or an OBE?
MBE, she got an MBE.
For her services to homeless people. I mean,
she deserved.
It's quite a small pub on the outskirts of Manchester, and they feed over 150 homeless people a day. But it's also where some of the greatest WSO gigs take place as well, which are always fundraisers. So we're quite involved in that.
That's good to hear. As ACTC says, we salute you. So there you go. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing out there too. So I guess jump into Luddites here too, I guess. I'm sure, was it one of your last names, or what does Luddite mean?
Well, Luddites basically was a political movement that started in Yorkshire and parts of Lancashire and spread to the rest of the country. When people decided that they wanted to modernise the clothing manufacturing business, really, textiles, weaving. Thank you, Nick. They brought in some new machinery, And this machinery was going to make a lot of these artisans redundant. So basically, what they did is they smashed the machinery in an act of defiance. It was a little bit broader than that as well, but basically, yeah, they caused so much trouble that basically they were fighting with the army at the time, and the establishment were out to get them, and they duly did get the ringleaders and imprisoned them and various other things.
They deported a lot of them to Australia, which is what we used to do as a country.
Well, you could get deported for stealing a bottle of milk then, Nick, please.
Could, yes. Yeah, but this was at the time of the Industrial Revolution.
Well, yeah.
And sort of being in the north of England as we are, that was kind of central to the Industrial Revolution. So, you know, it was the same thing happening then as is happening now, which is technology removing people's jobs. That's never changed. But of course, back in those days, if you lost your job to one of these machines, they had great names, by the way. One of the machines was called the Spinning Jenny.
Yeah.
That the Luddites went around smashing up. But of course, you know, if a factory full of people lost their jobs, there was no state support for them at all. There was nothing. You know, there was no unemployment benefit or
feed the families,
food stamps or anything. There was literally nothing. So they rose up as so many bodies of people have done over history, and got smashed back down again, as so many bodies of people have done over the course of history. But that's where the Luddites name comes from. It was a bit of a pun with electric Luddites, because, you know, you'd consider, if you know the history of the Luddites, that we should still be playing acoustic guitars and loops and have nothing to do with the technology, whereas we use all sorts of electronics and all of the technology there is. So we're certainly not anti-technology. What we are against is very powerful people using that power inappropriately against the people, which doesn't, by the way, make us sort of associates of the Labour Party in this country or anything like that at all. It runs far deeper than that. Far deeper than that.
But strangely enough, Luddites were not anti-technology. That's the thing that's put against them. They were only against technology that actually removed people's jobs. Whereas if the technology provided employment, they were fine with it. So history records them as being technophobes, and that's not quite true.
That's sadly how it goes, but at the same time, you can see why. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you're pushing us out of our jobs. We ain't got no jobs here. It's that South Park thing. Like, they took our jobs. So yeah. So I can see why, but I mean, hey, it's a good history lesson there too. So, and I think COVID seemed to be like a bit of an axe that kind of like really split it up. Is that kind of how it went in Sheffield when COVID had hit?
Yeah, I mean, there were basically COVID in Sheffield created in its wake a lot of places and businesses had shut down, and a lot of people involved in music industry who basically couldn't earn a living anymore. We're talking about sound engineers and lighting engineers and venues who really struggled, as he did everywhere, really, you know. So we lost a few during that. I worked through COVID, but not as a musician. I worked at a supermarket to help deliver food to people, really. I got paid for it because it was part of the firm I worked for. But yeah, so during first lockdown, I worked through that, which was an interesting time, really.
The biggest thing for me is that my two youngest kids were teenagers at the time, and I was kind of fascinated to watch the many and various different ways that them and their mates managed to break the rules so they could actually come together in the way that teenagers should be able to. So that was interesting.
Breaking the law, breaking the law. So yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah. I guess how bad was COVID for you guys personally? I guess did you guys get real sick? Were you guys okay?
I got COVID before it got cold COVID. People dropping like flies where I worked in February, I think it was. Not February, sorry, no, November. They were dropping like flies, and an entire floor at department store I worked at, first floor, all went down with this mystery illness. And I got it, and I thought I was dying. I was in bed for 3 days. I never felt so ill in my bloody life. And then it took a couple of weeks for it really to kind of go. And then I went back to work, but we didn't know what it was at the time. Nobody knew.
I know it was really bad for a lot of people, but I actually had a good pandemic, and I almost feel guilty saying that, sort of like survivor's guilt, but it was a chance for a bit of a reset in a lot of ways, because I've been working far too hard, and I'm no longer in the first flush of youth. So just a chance to pause, to put a lot of things on pause, and we're sat here in a room full of guitars and keyboards and other musical instruments. So that was actually no bad thing. I did get COVID. I was quite ill, but it was an illness. I've had worse illnesses over the years, so I actually didn't mind it so much.
I mean, you have to count yourself lucky, because how many people globally died from it.
Yeah.
So we're all blessed, everybody who got through it, We are.
Yeah.
And we should be eternally grateful for the fact that we actually got through it.
Oh, sure. But flippantly, we both wrote a hell of a lot of songs.
Yes, absolutely.
And probably read a lot of books, and
watched documentaries and whatever on certain things.
Learned a bit about some things.
So at least we can say there was some good things out of it. So yeah.
How was it for you, Brian?
I still remember the day the world stood still. For me, it was March 15th, 2020. And fortunately, I was still able to work from home. So I was able to do that. And then I still had a job throughout the whole pandemic. I didn't actually get COVID until I went to Nashville, which is our Country Music Hall of Fame. And that was in 22. So, and that really knocked me on my ass. And I'm a drummer, so I tried hopping on my drum set, and I was just that fatigued. I couldn't do it. So overall, I would say, hey, it was good. And I'd say the best benefit was nap time. So
yeah. That's a habit I got into. Yeah.
During lunch break. So yeah. So easy way. So, but on all seriousness and jokes aside, it's good to see you guys are doing well there. But I guess, how bad was Sheffield rock from COVID? And I guess, has the music scene been on the up and up, or is it more tribute and cover bands now?
There's far too much tribute and cover bands, for sure.
Because that makes money for them.
Yeah.
Why?
We got a few friends who have gone down what I would call the last refuge of a scoundrel, and are playing in various tribute bands. But you can't knock the money they're making if that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
It's certainly not for me. I did it for 12 years, and by the end, I remember thinking I used to dread going on stage, and I used to think, if I ever have to play Brown Eyed Girl again, shoot me, please, because it was too much. But having said that, I mean, a few smaller independent venues have opened this year in Sheffield.
Yeah.
So although the live music scene for independent artists and smaller bands has struggled at times, the flame has kept flickering. It's never completely gone away. And I think the musical history of Sheffield means that it never really will. one of the things, he's probably going to give me one of his old-fashioned looks in a minute, but one of the things that did damage it, albeit not fatally, I thought at the time, was the Arctic Monkeys, who obviously became a very big band indeed, and became tax exiles over in LA for a few years, and all of those sorts of things. Now, at the time they came into being, and they were kind of doing support slots for friends of ours. The music scene in Sheffield at that time had never been better. There were some really, really top-notch, quite quirky bands in the quirkiness that's a tradition of Sheffield. And then all of a sudden, Arctic Monkeys arrive on the scene. Very, very good musicians, and Alex is a great lyricist, and I'll say that. But what happened then is the next generation that came up after them all wanted to be the new Arctic Monkeys. And so, the whole scene for probably 10 years became very homogeneic, if that's the word, with lots and lots of sort of kids in their late teens and early 20s all trying to write the next I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor. And that, it was funny. For a couple of years we had every record company in existence crawling all over the city, looking for the next Monkeys. It never quite happened. A couple of them it nearly did. A lot of bands got signed, and then a lot of bands got dropped after their first album with the majors. And it's taken a while for it to begin to get back to what it used to be. Funnily enough, at the time of the Monkeys, or immediately before, there was a really strong Americana scene in Sheffield.
Yeah.
And that's still there, by the way. We get various, mainly independent, but touring artists from the USA and from Canada that come over quite routinely.
High caliber, they are. They're all very, very, very good.
Yeah.
They are very good. It's a treat, actually. So you get a very high caliber of Americana.
Yeah, there's a particular venue that kind of specialises in the alt country and Americana scene in Sheffield. It's been running gigs now for over 20 years, and we're not attached to any movement and don't want to be and never would be. But that's the one that we really do like and admire, and have a lot of time for the people that are in it in Sheffield, and arrange these brilliant gigs. So that's always gone on throughout.
That's pretty cool. I had no idea about the Americana scene. Actually, I've been to England and then also Scotland and Wales. Actually, probably represent Wales.
I'm actually Welsh.
Are you?
Yeah. No, I've never lived there, but historically, all of my family are Welsh, and this gentleman is also not English.
Well, I am. I'm just a quarter Irish. On me,
just crossed over from the pond, so yeah.
Grandmother, yeah. So I've got a drop, and it is only a drop.
Whereas I've got a lot of Welsh, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
So I like the T-shirt, Brian.
Courtesy of Conway. That's actually where I got this T-shirt at. I actually saw Conway Castle, and I was crossed over and had a little fish and chips. So, can't always go wrong with that. So, beautiful country. I will say that, beautiful country. So,
as is Scotland.
I did say Scotland. So,
yeah.
So Scotland was. I would say Scotland though had a little bit of rain, so that was kind of a little bit of a letdown there. So.
Great music scenes in Scotland, in Wales, and in Ireland. Absolutely banging.
I've got a story about that from 1986 because I'm old. So in 1986, I was 25, and I was living in Cornwall, which is the extreme southwest tip of the British Isles. And it used to be a country in its own right.
It did.
And it also has its own language, which is Kernuic. And I'd ended up living there for a while before I came back to Sheffield. And I was playing in a band. And they have, every 2 years, a thing called the Pan-Celtic Song Contest. And basically the 6 Celtic nations each have to come up with an original song written in their language. And the 6 winners from each of the individual Celtic nations go through to the final, which is always held in Ireland. So I was a lead singer at that time. And my bands, we actually wrote, I wrote the lyrics in English about one of their great martyrs that was kind of hung, drawn and quartered by the English back in the day, because we had a lot of that sort of stuff happening in these islands, a lot.
The Braveheart, yeah. So yeah.
So that song was translated into the Cornish language, and then I was taught to sing it phonetically. And so we entered this song contest, the Cornish Heat, not expecting to win it. We'd almost done it for a laugh, because most of the acts that entered it, they were folk acts. You know, it was like men with very long hair and beards with a finger in their ear singing about "As I Was Wandering Through the Dingley Dell," but they were singing it in Cornish.
Trouble.
Whereas we were using electric guitars, drum machines, synthesizer, and we won it, which was great. So we got flown out to Ireland for the final. But the problem was, in the local paper, the next day there was a photo of me, and somebody had found out I wasn't Cornish, and the headline was "Yorkshiremen will sing for Cornwall." And the Cornish went mad, because there's quite a big nationalist movement down there who thought I shouldn't even be in Cornwall, let alone representing them. So it turned out to be a little bit bittersweet, that one. And we lost in the final as well. We came second to Brittany.
Well, that's no shame. There's fantastic music from Brittany as well, man.
But we did beat Wales, Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man. So there we go.
Wow.
So that happened. That was a weird turning point in my musical life. That singing in Cornish.
Well, hey.
Not having a clue what I was singing.
Well, you must have, because it was just a rough translation of English, surely.
How did I know that they'd not translated it into something?
Well, you could have been singing anything, Nick.
That's what I thought.
Well, apparently it worked. I mean, you won that, but then came in second. So, I mean, you were doing something right.
Yeah.
But nothing like pissing off a few nationalists at the same time to kind of get your name in the headlines. So,
No, we're not, we'll piss anybody off.
Well, Nick,
we're punks. That's what we're supposed to do. So, yeah.
question everything.
Yeah.
Question everything.
That's what we're supposed to do. That's how life goes. So, hey. Well, congratulations there nonetheless there too. And hopefully Sheffield's on the up and up. I think also at the same time, instead of Arctic Monkeys, I think they're looking for that next Wonderwall from Oasis.
Oh, Wonderwall. Oasis. I'm not saying anything. I'm giving out to. All I'll say is ticket prices ridiculous.
Well, you see, my covers band made money courtesy of Oasis, because our thing was we mainly played 60s and blues. Okay, but what we did is we bought the original amps, like valve amps, AC30s, Vox AC30s and stuff like that. And what we what we decided is that if you look at really, really early footage of bands like The Who playing live when they were still called the High Numbers, the energy was like the punk energy. And because the recording technology wasn't that good, quite frankly, in the early 60s. That energy, the raw energy, never translated to the records, but live they were like early punk bands. So we tried to recreate that in the live show by using, valve amps and all of that sort of thing. And then there is a school of thought that Oasis were basically just 1960s copyists. All right, all I'm saying is this is a school of thought. But when we were playing universities and stuff, there was all these young people watching us, and they were like, "Oh God, these are great because like they look like our dads, but they sound like Oasis." Well, now Oasis actually sound like the bands that we're covering. It's not us trying to sound like Oasis, it's Oasis trying to sound just like, bands like the Yardbirds and the Small Faces would have sounded at the time. So I suppose I'm a bit grateful to them for that, but only for that.
No, I think that they've done very well for themselves.
Yeah.
Irrespective of whether you like everything they do or don't, they've earned the place and they've earned the money. Yeah.
They've earned the right to charge that price for tickets for their reunion shows.
I can't hold with that. Your fans are your lifeblood, and you should look after them. That's my opinion, and you shouldn't mistreat your fans. That's, I'm sure they're not mistreating them because they're saying it's the people who are selling tickets that are involved in it. So
the tickets are pricey enough as it is, aren't they?
Well, all tickets are pricey anyway. I mean, Rolling Stones, look at the price of their tickets; they're astronomical, really. But they don't sell too many records anymore, and they have to make the money through merchandising. So it does price some people out at gigs. That's all I'd say.
So Sheffield's only about 35 miles from Manchester.
30, roughly.
And it's about 70 miles from Liverpool.
Yeah.
And it's about 30 miles from Leeds.
Yeah. So
in a very, very small area, you've got these four major cities that obviously have got, I'm going to say, certainly since the 60s, because the UK's musical heritage goes back centuries and centuries, but since the 60s, it's got a huge chunk in this area of the UK's musical heritage. With Beatlemania and Mersey Beat and all of the Manchester bands of the 80s and 90s and all the quirky stuff that's come out of Sheffield, the likes of Pulp and ABC and everybody like that. Not so much from Leeds.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. There's been some fantastic bands from Leeds,
but not as many.
Well, I mean, think about Liverpool is if it hadn't been a maritime port, then all early records wouldn't have got into Liverpool, and that basically kick-started like English rock and roll, really.
Yeah.
So we've got a debt of gratitude for all those records coming from stateside, really.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have a kind of English alternative music. Really, all goes back to that. Really, that's where it was all birthed from. Well, we didn't have any kind of music like that before.
No.
The same with jazz as well,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were well ahead of us with it, obviously, because that's where the music was being made and produced.
Yeah.
I mean, we had one radio station in the UK that devoted itself to popular music. But apart from that, we had the pirate radio stations, which tended to be sited on boats
Radio
off the
Caroline.
coast. Yeah, Radio Caroline, Radio Luxembourg. So they were illegal pirate radio stations. And the DJs there, they were managing to get hold of, the records from the States. And they were playing those. And that's how people in the UK first got to hear. I mean, initially the likes of Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker and all of this, and it blew the nation away. really, and that was the foundation of all of it. And it wasn't dissimilar with punk, really, because that kind of, I mean, England was right, absolutely right for it at the time. It needed it, but originally that came out of the CBGB's movement in New York, of course, and all of those bands,
and other places in US as well. Because there were punk bands in many cities across US, yeah. But yeah,
it was the likes of the Ramones and Television,
definitely Ramones,
or New York Dolls,
Patti Smith,
all of that kind of kick-started it, and then we started hearing that over here, and you had a hugely pissed off and disenfranchised generation of teenagers that heard this stuff, and punk just completely exploded. It exploded.
Yeah, that's why Alice Cooper did so well whenever he came on your scene. I guess it was when he had that album with a giant snake on his stomach there. And I guess, I don't want to say the religious institutions, but whatever it was, they were trying to put like this big sticker on and say, like, don't listen to this. And it's like, it's just one way to make the guy popular. And I mean, the more the grown-ups disliked it, the more the teens liked it.
That's always been that way, hasn't it?
Yeah. Try and ban something or say something's bad, and people just flock to it. That's what happens, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, how much did the scene explode with like Black Sabbath and like those sorts of bands coming onto the scene, and then later Ozzy Osbourne doing his own stint?
Well, that was before punk, really. Black Sabbath were back in the sort of late 60s, early 70s. And they weren't that huge, really, in the UK in those days. I mean, what was the big single they had?
Well, there's War Pigs.
Yeah,
for a start.
But the UK seemed to be going down a bit of a prog rock route at the time. You still have the bands that had come off the back of the blues explosion in the 60s. So, Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and all of those. But then the other side of that, you've got, what had come out of the hippie movement, really, and that was the likes of Genesis and Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all of those bands. And I think, our generation, being teenagers in the 70s, have got thoroughly bored, really bored with all of that, and we were looking for something else to listen to. So, if you talk to a lot of the original punk artists, and especially the Clash, they'll mention things like Mott the Hoople, who at that time hadn't had any hits. They were being heavily supported by David Bowie, actually, in his management. I mean, David Bowie wrote and gave to them all the young dudes. That was one of Bowie's. And they just toured and toured and toured and toured non-stop and became really brilliant bands. Mick Jones from The Clash used to kind of follow them around when he was in his teens from gig to gig. But beyond that, we'd started to look abroad, and we were looking at bands like Cam, coming out of Germany, Holger Zuke and Damon Suzuki and all of that lot.
You were, because you're older.
I'm only 4 years older than you.
Yeah, but it makes a difference. 4 years is a lot when you're a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like for me, none of those bands registered. I had an idea who they were, but I didn't actually care very much.
You didn't have big brothers playing shit to you.
I didn't have any big brothers playing anything to me. No, I ended up discovering my music through listening to like stuff like John Peel and stuff like that. So John Peel Radio Show and all that.
Yeah.
And rock bands, as they were called then, really were unknown territory for me. But obviously, I've had a vast musical education since.
Yeah.
But those 4 years make a big difference.
They do, because at that time a lot could happen in 4 years. I mean, I was I was lucky because I got older brothers and older cousins, a couple of whom were musically active and playing. So, you know, from a very, very early age, I was sort of listening to all of their 45s and everything like that. So that made a big difference in terms of being exposed to a lot of stuff that I suppose most of my peers weren't being, because they didn't have, you know, these older brothers that were ramming it down my throat. So that was quite fortunate, because yeah, some of it was great, but you know, then me dad was more into country music, so you know, Jim Reeves and stuff like that. But you know, even before that, the Ink Spots, and then my mum was like Tom Jones and all of that sort of stuff, really. But yeah, I've been lucky to always have, you know, various people that have said, "Hey, listen to this, Nick. Have a listen to this, and yeah, that's always been great."
Well, I grew up listening to Beatles, really, because my mum were a massive Beatles fan. So I grew up listening to Beatles and Roy Orbison and Elvis and that kind of thing, and Glenn Campbell as well. Yeah.
Who's your favourite Beatle, Dave?
I like them all, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like them all. I was Beatles mad as a kid.
Did you ever have one of them plastic Beatles wigs?
No, I had a cake with Beatles figures on it when I was about 7.
Did you?
Yeah, and I kept those Beatles figures for years.
And what happened to them?
I don't know. They disappeared, did they? Probably did big bit. Didn't really make any difference. That's when I got really interested in music, I think, first, originally. It was listening to my mum's records, really. So,
well, when I was about 6, I had a plastic Beatles wig. Plastic, just a chunk of bloody plastic. But they were obviously for adults. So it used to hang down here, and I used to run around our estate with this, pretending I was John Lennon. It was always John Lennon for me.
I'd say for me, it was, and I didn't realize this till later, was Ringo Starr. And he first I was a drummer, but then he was Mr. Conductor. When I was a kid, he was doing the Thomas the Tank Engine series.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's how I found out about him. And then later was like, oh, he's a drummer for the Beatles. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? So yeah. So, but hey, he's still alive and kicking. So God bless him. So
yeah.
Like I said, all the bands we have mentioned here too, I guess, all these bands, do they like influence you in terms of your sound and I guess guitar playing?
Where do you start the influences?
I think you're influenced by everything you hear and everything you come into contact with. Not necessarily consciously, but I think you soak things up like a sponge. And sometimes you'll start playing a little thing and you record something and then you'll think, oh, that sounds a bit like that song. And you've not consciously even attempted to give it that flavour. So I think there's a lot of stuff that you hear, and it'll come out in some convoluted form later, quite possibly. That's what I honestly think.
Well, Dave, more so than me, listens to a hell of a lot of world music.
I do.
So bits of that undoubtedly come into our sound.
Well, I fell in love with Middle Eastern music when I was in Greece on holiday, and on the buses they were playing Middle Eastern music, and I just found it fascinating, and I ended up really getting into like that kind of like Middle Eastern kind of like music, and then music from places in Africa, and you know, if music's food, I like most things really, you know.
We go to a festival. Well, Dave goes every year, and I usually go. It's in a small town up on the Yorkshire coast called Whitby. Whitby is famous for being the goth centre of the universe.
Yeah.
They have a huge goth festival there every year. but a lot of Goths have kind of made it their home. It's a real quaint old fishing town. The reason the Goths are there is that in the book Dracula, when the ship with Dracula on it lands in Whitby, so it's got the strong Dracula connection. But they also have a 3-day World Music Festival every October called Musicport, and that's really amazing because you get artists from all over the world, and you can just sit there for 3 days and soak up experiences, but soak up music that you probably never have heard or contemplated listening to in a live setting. They have 4 or 5 stages?
They have got 5 stages, 5 stages.
Last time we played on it, we played on an old double-decker bus upstairs.
Blunderbuss.
The blunderbuss, yeah. So
the Luddite bus. We should call it the Luddite bus.
Yeah. Influences come out of that. In fact, I've just while we're having this conversation, I've thought about it. Our new single came out yesterday, which is called "My God Is Bigger Than Your God," and the sort of opening 16 bars to that are very much Eastern.
These playing Middle Eastern scale on intro, yeah.
But then, whilst I think about it, and I only realised this long after we'd recorded it, so my lead guitar part in it, without having consciously realised it at the time, is a direct rip-off of an Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark song. So,
right.
stuff comes from everywhere, really. A big thing for me is melodies. I love writing melodies more than anything else. I like beats, yes, of course I do, but it's melodies. I like little melody lines, and that's my bit. And they can literally come from anywhere in the world.
That's pretty cool. Actually, it's a little interesting that Dave mentioned about the Middle Eastern sort of music when he said he was on holiday in Greece. That's pretty cool, I guess. Were you going around Athens and all those places? See all the Parthenon and all those guys. Was that what you were doing, or were you kind of just chilling?
No, I was actually in Cyprus, which is part of Greece. So I was in Cyprus, and Cyprus is split between Turkey and Well, we won't get into that because it's. But basically, they were playing Turkish music on there. I just had 2 weeks away from my job with my friend and her little daughter. Lots of sunshine, lots of me wandering around listening to music and eating local food and having a thoroughly inspiring time, really.
I bet you did a hell of a lot of eating, didn't you?
Oh, I a fair few things, yeah. Nice food.
It is. I mean, a similar thing. So I'm a massive Wilco fan. I love Jeff Tweedy. I think Nels is currently the best living guitarist, just my opinion. But not just the stuff he does with Wilco, but the stuff he does around jazz and experimental. And I was lucky enough last year. Well, it was my son did it actually. He's a very good guitarist, my young son. He's 23, but he stayed up all night in the queue to get tickets for Wilco doing a residency in Reykjavik, Iceland. There's a beautiful new music hall on the harbour in Reykjavik, and he managed to get us tickets for all 3 nights, and it was a really brilliant father and son thing. We were just about the only Brits there, because Wilco don't actually have much of an audience in the UK. So there were like, a few thousand Yanks and then me and our Luke. They did 68 numbers over the 3 nights with no repeats. But we were also able to get out and hear some of the Icelandic music that was going on. And that's, it's a volcanic island. It's an island that's alive. They call it the land of fire and ice. There's volcanic eruptions happening there at the moment. And the music there is very much of their geography. Some of it's very, very ethereal, but there's some quite elemental, almost violence underpinning that. So I kind of discovered on that trip that Icelandic music isn't just Björk. There's a hell of a lot more going on out there. And I think that's what both of us love doing. It's like a voyage of discovery, that there's always new music. I think currently the global independent scene is amazing. I've discovered so much new music this year that I just love.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it here too. I'd say
all over the place.
Actually, I was going to say, because the way you're kind of describing this group Wilco here, I guess, do you guys try to be subtle with your lyrics, or do you tend to be pretty direct with what you're talking about? Because normally that's what punk was normally meant to be straight to the point. So
it depends.
Yeah.
Some songs are completely like a sledgehammer lyrically, so there's no mistaking exactly what I'm saying. But on some things, it depends on subject matter. So on some things, it'll be more subtle. But if it's a song that I've written in anger, then it'll be in your face. Basically, that's how it goes.
So the last two singles, he must have been a very angry man lately, because they're both really in your face.
Yeah, well, those two particular subjects really upset me. So
yeah.
that's why there's no subtlety there.
Yeah.
Whereas Another Day in Paradise is completely
subtle.
Yes, it's very subtle.
Although our solo stuff is both of us is different again. So his tends to be, mine's subtle. His tends to be actually more subtle than mine most of the time. But yeah, that punk ethos certainly comes across lyrically in the band, because there's anger there
on certain issues, definitely.
At what we observe.
Basically, I despise war. I despise people who make profits from war, and I hate to see victims of war. And if my song's relating to a war, then I get angry. And anything where people are being abused and hurt will bring out my more direct sledgehammer kind of lyrics.
I mean, the single before last was called Not on These Streets, and you might know that in the summer in England, it didn't really happen. No, it happened in Northern Ireland as well, but not in Scotland or Wales.
No, sensible. Well.
Yeah, we had street riots, and they took place. We're very proud of Sheffield, because that's never happened in Sheffield. As a city, we're known as a city of sanctuary, because we are incredibly welcoming to refugees and the people that have arrived here from a war situation, basically. But about 6 miles from where we're sitting, so not in Sheffield, outside of Sheffield, another town, an angry mob tried to burn a load of refugees out of a hotel. And it was very deeply unpleasant indeed. Dozens and dozens and dozens of police injured, and it was nasty. They were trying to take life, and they're doing this on the streets that they live on. They're wrecking their own environment. So that was what Not on These Streets were about. But one of the lyrics in that was, shall I call you fascist? Because some of you are, which is pretty direct. But
well, there were people involved in helping to facilitate those disturbances up and down country who were fascist.
Yeah,
definitely card-carrying members. Most of the people who were involved in it were not fascists, but there were definitely fascist agitators behind some of those disturbances. Hence my lyric.
Yeah.
You know,
Were these people Ukrainian, or were they from like the Middle East?
Predominantly Middle East. I mean, you know,
and Africans as well.
And Africans. I mean, no, the Ukrainians were they're the right colour, the right colour, aren't they? So they're regarded as being okay. You know, plus, you know, it's right on our doorstep, that war as well. But no, it's people from the Far East, it's people from Africa. I mean, obviously, right at the moment, you're seeing a lot of people coming in from Syria because of everything that's kicking off down there just now. Lebanon has also not been too good. The poor buggers in Palestine can't actually get out right now. But, you know, before that, you know, Afghanistan, obviously. So, you know, there's always been... I mean, this is a country that's built, same as America, it's a country that's built on immigration. You know, there isn't an indigenous English people. It's been invaded so many times over the centuries that, you know, if you do DNA tests, there isn't an English people. I mean, there's more of a Welsh, Scottish, Irish people, but...
there's also Vikings, because North of England and areas of Scotland are predominantly Viking DNA, because they did a test. And then Southern England is not Viking. Because
that's
our country was
German and French.
Yes, yeah. Well, most of people in North are of Scandinavian descent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Them Vikings. So yeah.
Well, they got all over, didn't they?
Oh, they did.
Oh yeah, very much.
Raping and pillaging and burning.
They didn't do raping and pillaging and burning everywhere. They did a bit.
Yeah, they did some.
Henry VIII did more destroying of monasteries than they did.
Yes. Yeah, we've got a violent history in these islands.
The War of the Roses too. So yeah.
Well, Yorkshire v Lancashire, indeed. My dad was born and brought up in Lancashire, though. But we're not into that tribalism anyway. I mean, ultimately, you know, we're talking about this stuff, and where it all goes back to for everybody is we all, I think, originated from one of two tribes in the Rift Valley. We're all originally African. Full stop. Everybody. You know, it all started in Africa, and then, you know, the diasporas spread and all of the rest of it. So, yeah, we're all people. We're all just people. We prefer to ignore the differences and look for the similarities, and there are more similarities than there are differences.
Absolutely, much more.
And that's the closest we come to politics. Actually, that. You know, we're all brothers and sisters, everybody. And even those that commit evil largely because the damage they've suffered as kids. In many, you know, the evil tends to be conducted by men, not women, by and large. But when you look at, you know, what's regarded as a strong world leader, they're all very, very damaged people, and anybody that wants that sort of power over other people, I think, has to be anyway. But they're all damaged people. They're all scared little boys, ultimately, all of them.
Or spoiled little boys, in some people's cases.
Well, there's that as well.
Maybe after coming to power, they're spoiled, but yeah, you can see why. So, see why. Because how have things been since the Labour Party guy took over here? I guess I know there was a couple of riots that happened a little back.
Well, there have been some policy changes, and there are some policies that were enacted by the previous lot that are being carried on. You know, so there's been a little change. We are promised great things, but aren't we always? By whoever's in power, we promise great things. Oh, you know, and then we strangely enough never get most of those great things that were promised, do we? But it's not just UK; that's everywhere, I believe, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's been some positive changes in some areas, and there's been some carry on of policies that I don't like. And then there's been some new policies with pensioners and the eating allowance, which I frankly don't like either. But
I mean, I think basically they're two cheeks of the same arse.
that's exactly what they are. It's exactly what they are.
So I didn't expect a great deal of change. You know, all we can do as individuals is try and change our own little bit of the world around us, and you know, anything the good that happens anywhere tends to be despite the government, really. You know, it's communities that do all the good, isn't it? In whatever area a community might exist, you know, whether it's a physical community, or you know, an online community, or whatever it might be. You know, it's when people come together, that's when good things tend to happen.
That's for sure.
It all depends whether people in charge feel threatened by a certain issue that people are kicking off against, and if they do, then they capitulate. That's what happens. If they're worried enough, they capitulate. Really. To say
fear is what keeps you bound. So yeah.
Well, everything comes down to fear, doesn't it?
Basically.
In the end, you know, the opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. Hate comes from fear. Hate is irrational because it comes from something that somebody fears. You know, why do they hate something? Well, because they're scared of it. So, you know, ultimately, it's fear is the thing. I think that's a personal view. So it's fear that we need to try hard not to
drop your backy.
Drop
your backy. All right.
He's dropped his backy.
Well, he dropped a little bit. It's not in the world. No, fear drives people to all sorts of things, and to not behave rationally, and to believe stereotypes and whatever else. But you know, there's nothing to fear except fear itself, really, to use that old adage. It's crazy.
Well, so you got that from FDR. So yeah, it does make a good point there too. So let's jump into this question here, because it seems like you guys do have some challenges that we can get into the gear afterwards. But what challenges do you guys feel like you face these days? Is it more of AI and social media, or maybe more so some political and social things?
That kind of ties in what I said earlier, which is we just plod on, regardless. You know, whatever challenges are there, well, you know, if we can't blast our way through them, we find a way to go around them, or over them, or under them. But the only thing we're bothered about is being able to make music.
Yeah.
You know, we both get actually quite shitty if we're in an environment for too long where we're unable to make music. So we just carry on making music. That's all we can do, and that's what we love. And you know, we're at the time of life now where that's enough of itself.
Yeah, it is. It's enough of itself. It's a compulsion. It's an obsession. It's a love. It's like breathing for me. Really, I can't stop being involved in music. I just cannot. I can't envisage a life without it.
For some people, I guess it's things like chocolate or masturbation, but for us, music's what?
Equating chocolate with masturbation, are we?
I can see the parallels.
Chocolate covered dildo next. How about that? So
I can see the parallels.
Little sugar high rush.
Yes, it could be a song in there.
There could be a song in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I would see more of a parallel with Red Bull and then masturbation. So,
yeah, I've not drunk it for many years actually.
well, that's good. So, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, no, not too much for us in the way of challenges. I mean, the world is challenging if you allow it to be. But I'm an adherent to the Serenity Prayer. Do you know the Serenity Prayer?
Not off the top of my head. Can you?
Well, I don't say it in any religious way because I'm absolutely not religious. I have no truck with any man-made religion at all. But the Serenity Prayer is God's, whatever your God might be, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And it's that last bit that I have the problem with, obviously, the wisdom to know the difference. But I mean, that pretty well sums up life for me, that, if it's something I can't change, I'm not going to waste a second of my life worrying about it, because that's not going to change anything. If it's something I can change, well, I'll set about changing it, and then it will be changed. So what that means is that although we sing about all this shit that goes on in the world, I'm not particularly worried about it, because I'm doing the only bit I can do, which is writing songs about it. The rest of it I've got no control over, so I can't waste time worrying about it.
The only issues we've had as a band have been technical ones. we equipment not working as it should live, which is extremely embarrassing, because it's supposed to work and then it decides to do the exact opposite of what you want it to.
So we'll have these fantastic beats that we've programmed, that we're dead proud of, and then we come to play a gig and the venue's PA just isn't capable of coping with them, actually. So you're playing along to what sounds like somebody hitting a fish with a sock full of custard instead of your beats, which doesn't make for an ideal gig. But we're troopers. We grit our teeth and we get through to the end. And some people might think that was the sound we wanted.
Yeah, but it's not. Well, the thing is that we've taken steps recently to get round that issue. So we've bought some equipment that kind of circumvents need for a small PA apart from vocals, really. So now we've got complete control of us line, which is money well spent, I believe.
I mean, I'd really like us to have a drummer again. We had an amazing drummer, Mike. Now, Mike was the oldest in the band, actually, and his mum is 99. 99, Mike's mum, and she lives down in South Wales. So Mike had to move back down to South Wales, and he's actually now in his childhood bedroom, where he is the carer for his mum, which meant we no longer had a drummer. Now, I've put a couple of adverts out in the last year for a drummer, but I don't think, well, they've not worked. What I always say is we don't want a rock drummer and you won't make any money.
No.
So that maybe...
That puts people off.
It's honest.
Well, it is honest.
It's honest.
Well,
I got bills to pay, man. So yeah.
Absolutely, people have bills to pay. So
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. So I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, we can't expect people to play for nothing, right? We do it by choice. So
yeah, but we're giving them the choice to do the same thing.
Because they might not be able to afford it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've never met yet a drummer who needs all of those tom-toms that they've got. They could sell a couple of tom-toms and then they could afford to pay for nothing. They don't need that many tom-toms. They have too many.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works. It's not as easy as you think. Maybe you could get them to sell one and then just keep the other two like a regular rack top and then one floor. So
Yeah, like saying to you, sell some of your guitars.
That's
Who want to
different.
do that? Oh, of course it's different.
I mean, I don't know how to argue with that. I'm gonna have to take Dave's side on this. So sorry, Nick.
That's okay.
Okay. But I guess speaking of the gear here too, I guess. So what you boys got?
Oh, what you start? You've got loads at the moment, haven't you?
Well, right, okay. So I've got four drum machines, different ones. I've got two guitars, 3 electric guitars, 5 acoustic guitars. I've also got a bouzouki as well, and a mandolin, and a violin, keyboard. I think that's it. Enough.
My main electric guitar at the moment is an Epiphone Sheraton, which I absolutely love to bits. And my main acoustic guitar is a Taylor Mini, electroacoustic, Baby Taylor, which I also love to bits. As well as that, I play a Fender Jazz Bass. I've got a Fender Stratocaster. What else is there? A Harlan 12-string, a Tanglewood acoustic, a very old vintage Yamaha electric guitar, a Yamaha SG style electric guitar. Amp-wise, I'm going through one of the new Fender GT Mustang ranges, which is the modelling amps. So there's nothing very Luddite about that, because that can create every amp sounds of every amp that Fender have ever issued, going back, well, to the 50s.
Yeah.
And you've also got built into it every effect, every pedal. So that's a thing of beauty. What else have I got down here? A custom 50-watt custom combo for when I'm playing acoustic guitar. I've got a violin, I've got a mandolin, various keyboards kicking about the place, a few drum machines and loopers. I play bass through Orange amplification. So yeah, we kind of collect quite a lot of stuff, really. And then my son has also got his own guitar collection now. The latest thing he's got is I've got my eyes on, but it's 2 floors down from where we are. It's a Gretsch Electromatic in white, which is absolutely beautiful. This lad for live work plays predominantly a Gretsch, don't you?
I play a parlor, a guitar, Gretsch parlor. One of their cheaper guitars, which is the Jim Ricky. So because when you plug that in, you can put it through an electric guitar amp because of pickup, and it sounds like an electric guitar, you know.
Yeah.
But I've also got modelers that make it sound like various acoustic guitars as well. So I'm not a Luddite either.
Well, because there's only 2 of us now, 2 of us and a drum machine or something similar, we lean on guitar effects quite a lot. One thing we don't do, we've got a red line: we will not play to backing tapes. Full stop. So, you know, apart from the drum machine or the program beats that we use, everything else that you hear when you play live is us. So yeah, it's as organic as we can make it, given that there's only 2 of us, and obviously that brings difficulties when we were used to being in a 5-piece band. We told you about the drummer Mike. Poor old Fig, he was the youngest in the band. He was a multi-instrumentalist, but mainly sax, which he was very good at, but he developed tinnitus. You know, tinnitus is the constant buzzing in your ears.
The ringing in your ear, yeah.
Yeah, and that was very difficult because as well as being in the band, he was also a sound engineer. So that was, a cataclysmic event that he could no longer. It's improved a little bit lately, hasn't it?
Well, he says so, yeah.
So we're hoping that at some point he might tentatively step back. And then Phil was another guitarist. He's destroyed his shoulder in a fall. The X-ray looked like it had literally exploded or he'd been shot or something. So that's not great for a guitarist. And if he ever manages to play again, he's certainly not there yet. And that happened the week after he'd invested in 2 new guitars as well. So it's been a combination of different life events that led to just us being the survivors. He did his best to get killed last weekend.
Get run over by a car in Leeds. So,
yeah, I did not. I didn't want to get killed. I did my best to run away, which I did eventually. But yeah, no, it's been a interesting journey from 5-piece to 2-piece, a musical exploration as well. So, well, the door is always open for ex-members if they can and want to join back to join us again. So there's no closed door, is there? Really.
But I wouldn't want Mike to join again because that would mean something's happened to his mum.
Well, yeah, I know.
So that's the only way he'd come back to Sheffield.
Yeah.
I think we're hopeful. And I think he'd pick up the bass if he came back. But ideally, we would love to have a bass player and a drummer. But they, how do I put it? They'd have to kind of share a very similar ethos to what we're about. And although we're not set in our ways musically, he's a grumpy fucker and he'd say the same thing about me. But we've known each other long enough that we can kind of, rub along and deal with it.
He's being honest when he's making fun of you too, Dave. So, man. Yeah, I love you, punk guys. You guys are honest at times. So, we try. All right.
Yeah.
So, boys, we beat through questions here pretty good. So, here, let's jump to some fun ones. Ready?
Yeah. Go on.
All right. So, start here with the first one. Whoever wants to go first. But what would you say is currently your favorite food?
My favourite food's always been the same, which is fish and chips. I love fish and chips. Good fish and chips, yeah.
And they do fantastic fish and chips at Whitby, where music for.
They do indeed, yeah. They do. There's many fine chippies there. Yeah.
My favourite's Indian. I'm a curry fiend. I'm lucky enough to work with a few people from the Indian subcontinent, and so I get to eat the stuff that isn't just the restaurant type thing. It's the real deal. So Indian for me every time. I love Indian food.
Well, I did have India at one point. That was the whole East India Trade Company. So,
right,
that'll do. Could be a song title, since I know you guys seem to like history and documentaries. So,
yeah.
I would say I always thought it was weird how you guys did the peas whenever you did the fish and chips. Whenever I came over here a couple of times.
Mushy peas. Yeah.
Well, see, in Yorkshire, that's known as Yorkshire caviar.
It's not.
That's what we refer to it as Yorkshire caviar.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, mushy peas are great. Yeah.
Especially with Henderson's relish, which is a speciality of Sheffield. They're great. Pies, mushy peas, and Henderson's relish.
Henderson's relish it's iconic, but only in Sheffield.
But only in Sheffield. Yeah.
Exclusively in Sheffield. And then we just get mayonnaise and relish, just mix that together for tartar sauce. So.
Oh God, it's nothing like tartar sauce. Do you know Worcester sauce, Worcestershire sauce?
I've had it a couple times. Yeah.
It looks like that, but tastes nothing like it because Henderson's has a lot more rotting anchovies in it, isn't it? It is quite fermented. It's piquant, very piquant. It's a brown liquid that you like liberally chuck all over your stew.
Your soup, your beans, anything really. You can put it on nearly anything.
A chip butty. It has to go on a chip.
It has to go on a chip butty, yeah.
Do you know what a chip butty is, Brian?
I don't know.
You know what chips are?
Chips, though, yeah.
What you call fries?
Oh, is this like loaded fries?
Fried potatoes. Well, no, they're just fried potato. Fried chipped potatoes.
Yeah.
And then you have a bread cake.
Or like a burger bun.
Like what you call a burger bun. We call a bread cake. You liberally spread it with butter. You put steaming hot chips on it, and then you douse it all in Henderson's relish. And it's actually been likened to, it's like an angel pissing on your lips.
I wouldn't say that before.
That's a Sheffield delicacy.
I don't know about that, but I would say kiss of an angel. How about that?
Yeah.
It's better to be kissed than pissed on. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think next time at Sheffield, I'll try out that dish, see if they have it there too. So. Okay. For the next one, what would you say is currently your favorite movie? And then if you have a favorite TV series you'd like to share, go ahead.
My favourite movie is an old one. I'm obsessed with Blade Runner. I love everything about Blade Runner. I've watched it a lot of times and I never ever get bored of watching. I even love soundtrack. It's fantastic. I absolutely adore it. Adore it. And TV series, well, it's usually something sci-fi, so it'll probably be Star Trek. Strange New Worlds currently, which I rather like. Yeah.
For me, my favourite film is also an oldie. I've got it in lots of different formats. I've watched it many, many, many times, and that's Apocalypse Now. I can just about quote the entire dialogue, including from the director's cut, word for word. And if somebody gives me money, I will. But now, for me, but also the poem that it was originally based on, The Heart of Darkness, which is an amazing poem. But yeah, Apocalypse Now, for some of the cast, I think it was their best ever filmed performances. Thought Marlon Brando, towards the end of his career was incredible in it. Martin Sheen does very, very well in it. Robert Duvall as the old cavalry captain whose brigade has been put into helicopters, and they fly over blasting Ride of the Valkyries out of speakers slung underneath the helicopters.
Don't forget Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper, indeed, yes. Dennis Hopper,
journalist,
amazing in it. So yeah,
Lawrence Fishburne, yeah, Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah.
So yeah, that by miles, that for me is my favourite film. Although I do like Pink Floyd at Pompeii as well. I've watched that probably too many times now. Television series, that's a difficult one because I'll watch football, soccer in your terms, but it's football really. I watch that, but I don't actually watch a hell of a lot of TV. Because I'm usually up here with a guitar or something.
I'm missing some good programs, but anyway.
I'm sure I am, but I just don't. What I do like, actually, I like wildlife programs.
Yeah.
So anything by David Attenborough, and that sort of thing. Yeah, wildlife programs or farming programs. I'm into that as well. I mean, I live in a city, but I always fancy myself as perhaps one day, having a bit of a croft on a Scottish island. And I'm probably too old to do that now. I don't think I've survived the first winter. But yeah, I like that sort of thing. Wildlife.
Those great choices right there. I was going to say, you guys have a lot of TV series or murder mystery sort of ones, or noir? I don't know. But anyway, there's a lot of like British shows that kind of delve into like murder mysteries, that sort of deal. I was like, you guys are killing yourselves too much up there. So
Yeah,
for all the wrong reasons. So I can see why.
there's some good crime series out of Britain, like there is. And I do occasionally watch bits and bats of those. But I'm basically a sci-fi nerd. You know, that's what I am. I'm just a sci-fi nerd. I always have been.
But you need the glasses then. I mean, that's what you need. So
He does actually dress as a Jedi warrior on stage.
Rubbish. Don't do any such thing.
this guy got the Liam Nelson there going there too, so we can call him Qui-Gon. So
You could.
you can get away with it.
You could.
He probably would. So, but to give you one quote from Apocalypse Now. Love the smell of napalm in the morning. So, yeah, great choice there, nonetheless.
Like that. It smells of victory.
So he does it.
Best cards as well, of course. Forget that bit.
Yeah.
It's a powerful film, though. It is.
Yeah.
Yep. Even though, funny enough, Marlon Brando was actually forgetting his lines a whole bit, and then Martin Sheen like almost died.
They had a rough time while filming it, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
No, there's a really good film, which is the filming of Apocalypse Now, a documentary. A long documentary. Yeah. Worth seeing.
Oh, yeah. It's like all this extensive footage. I think it was like 10 hours or something, like what they had to cut from the movie itself. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Good choices there. For the next question here, what would you say is your favorite alcoholic drink? And then what's your favorite non-alcoholic drinks?
I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first.
I'm a recovered alcoholic. So, once upon a time, my favourite alcoholic drink would have been a single malt whiskey, and I didn't go for the peaty ones that come from the islands. I would go for the ones that come from the Highlands. So my favourite alcoholic drink, although it's been quite some years since I had one, would have been a Highlands single malt whiskey.
Yeah. I don't drink either because I'm an alcoholic as well. So I was. Yeah, you never was. You always are.
Yeah.
But my favourite drink when I did drink was Guinness. And luckily now there's Guinness Zero that's got no alcohol in it at all and tastes exactly the same. And I'm a very happy man for that, really.
I've not had any of that.
It's nice. It tastes exactly like Guinness. And there's no side effects.
I don't drink anything that's supposed to resemble alcohol.
I know.
The alcohol
that's where we differ.
Yeah,
No, I understand why.
Non-alcoholic, on a hot summer's day, nothing beats a pint of ice cold ginger beer filled with ice and with a slice of lime. I absolutely love that. I love it. I also drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah, I drink a lot of coffee, but soft drink wise, I like grapefruit juice, really. Like, there's a drink called Lilt, or there used to be, which is...
Tango have robbed it now and turned it into something else, but it's still Lilt. It still tastes of Lilt.
Yeah, so that's my favourite with icing,
Yeah.
So like grapefruit and pineapple. Yeah.
I did say we're survivors, and that's part of our story. We're the lucky ones because a lot of people from our age group that went through the whole punk scene and all the rest of it didn't come out the other side. We've lost quite a lot of really good friends, and also, music's lost a lot of great people that everybody knows the names of. We were very, very lucky. He's been dry longer than me.
10 years.
Yeah, but we're both very grateful alcoholics in recovery.
That's great to hear. Congratulations there. I have been leaning in with that question, and I've always actually said at the wrong time here too, because some people were drinking alcohol return right on the interview as you too. So, but congratulations nonetheless there too. So good to see you guys have made it through. I would say instead of amphetamines, like what we were talking about earlier, you had to replace it now with the coffee beans. So
yeah, coffee. Too many cups of coffee.
Yeah.
my heart beats 100,000 miles an hour. Yeah. So,
Ice cream as well. I mean, I'm an addict, full stop. I accept that. I'm at peace with it. But ice cream. So I try to make sure my addictions. I mean, music's an addiction.
Yeah.
You know, there's no doubt about that. Music is an addiction. Certain bits of music can be an addiction. I can be obsessed about a particular track for bloody weeks and weeks and weeks. But ice cream, that's ice cream's definitely an addiction.
Tato crisps, which are Irish crisps, which are quite hard to get. But I managed to find somewhere selling them in the last few weeks, and I've been through bag after bag. I love them.
yeah. There's always an obsession somewhere. If it's not the bad sort of addiction, it's always a good addiction. So yeah, all right. Great choice there nonetheless. And for the last one right here, what would you say is currently your favorite song? If you want to list one that you would consider mainstream and then one from the independent community, go ahead.
Oh God. My favourite song. Well, is it mainstream? They are now. I like stuff by like kind of Velvet Underground, so you know, like Sweet Jane, or because they used to be underground, but they're not underground anymore, are they, Velvets? Not really.
No, they were during their existence.
Yeah,
they're a very influential act, aren't they?
Yeah, and then another old band would be Seek and Destroy by Iggy Stooges. I absolutely love that song. It's fantastic. I absolutely adore it.
I'm going to go for a Wilco song. They kind of vary from week to week in terms of what my favourite is, but I think currently my favourite is Handshake Drugs. But particularly the live performance of it on the double live album they did in Chicago a few years ago called Kicking Television, and that particular performance, it's a toss up between two. The other one that I would have gone for is Impossible Germany. And in particular a performance they did a long time ago. Jeff Tweedy still looks quite svelte without a beard. They did it on the David Letterman show, and the solo by Nels Klein on that just rips an enormous hole in the space-time continuum. It's incredible. So they're my main, we've both gone for two, but they're our mainstream ones. How about not mainstream for you?
Right, well, not mainstream, it'd have to be Lojo. So any track by Lojo, really, or a French band, world music and a performance art. Anything by them, really. I don't think they've done a bad song, really.
My favourite indie song I heard yesterday, and I've got a feeling it was only released yesterday, but it's by a guy, I believe he's in America, called Rob Bennett. Have you come across Rob Bennett?
Not yet, but I'll check him out. I know actually a couple other Bennetts, but go ahead.
I know you know Mick Soda, don't you? Mick Soda, the guy in Brussels.
Oh, I actually did interview him not too long ago. It's actually funny because it's Hungarian and Belgian mixed together, but it's Michoda.
Yeah, Michoda, Zoltan. Well, Rob Bennett is a mutual friend of Zoltan and me. He's released a song called The Traveller. Now, Rob generally plays reasonably, not entirely, but reasonably straight rock stuff. And he's all of a sudden dropped this single that has come flying out of left field. It's incredible. The vocal harmonies, they're almost Beach Boy-esque, but the instrumentation as well. He's not used standard rock instrumentation. I mean, I think I'm hearing a mandolin in there for sure, and possibly a guitarlele as well. But there's all sorts going on in it, and it was just so wholly unexpected. But it was absolutely brilliant. So I thought, oh, what's this? And I played it, and I just played it 4 times, once after the other. Completely blew me away. So the Traveller, he spelt it wrong. That's the only shame. He's only got 1 L in it, and us English people know Traveller's got 2 L's in it. But I did mention he's American. But no, absolutely wonderful single, and that's been my thing pretty well for the last 24 hours on repeat. In fact, I'll play it here on my way home.
Oh yeah, please do.
You'll really like it, actually. It's beyond interesting. It's quite fascinating what he's done with the instrumentation.
That was cool. I have to check it out. But yeah, I have interviewed Machoda. Actually, his is coming out sometime next year here too. So I'll let y'all know when it's out.
Well, I actually attended the private listening party yesterday. That some radio show in the States ran for Machoda's new EP. 4 tracks. So I heard them only once each for the first time yesterday. So they were played, and then the people on the party could discuss them, and you know, Zoltan could discuss what his motivation was for writing them, and everything like that. I love his stuff, by the way. And his English is better than mine, given that it's not his first language, but when he sings in English. But I love hearing him sing in French as well. But when you get to hear that EP, Brian, you are in for a treat. Honestly, it's beautiful.
All right, sounds good. I'll check it out when I can here too. I got pretty much a long list of our artists to check out. So yeah. Okay. The boys, we're down to one more question. My podcast right here. We actually are almost out of time. But before we jump into it, would you guys like to ask me any questions? Say any final words before we jump into it?
I think we'd both like to say a really big thank you to you.
Thank you.
I mean, I've certainly found this very comfortable. A few hours ago, I didn't expect to be able to do it because at the minute I'm absolutely riddled with some flu bug. Now, you know, what I've done is I've had a hell of a lot of honey and lemon today, which means that I've still just about got a voice, although it's a bit croaky. But the thing is, I'm probably quite a bit dehydrated because of the illness, and that's meant that I've sat here for crikey quite a long time now, and I've not had to go for a piss. So, but no, thanks ever so much, Brian.
Thank you.
What sort of stuff are you listening to at the moment?
I did mention about the British heavy metal that came out, like bands like Napalm Death and Bolt Thrower, for instance.
Yeah.
So I really dig that stuff. I thought you guys really kicked ass whenever that music started coming out. But I really dig a whole lot of the heavier metals. But every now and again, I delve back into rocks and then check out some of the other genres that some of us indies are putting out too. So it's a bit mixed bag at times.
I think the indie scene is great at the moment, isn't it? And I love the connections. There's another guy who in Australia known as Outback Dude, and he's just had a new single out today, and he has an album out not so long ago. And I really like what he's doing as well. He's producing some great stuff. Him, Nick Soda, myself, and a couple of other people are actually just in the infancy of working on a collaboration that will be out later next year. So I'll be sure to send you a copy of that once it's done, because the genres are so different that.
And hey, somehow it works. So yeah.
We're not sure how that's going to turn out yet. One of the other guys is a rapper, but we're all in 5 different countries. And none of us have ever met other than via the internet. So that makes it exciting for me.
That'd be cool. All right. Anything else before we jump into the last question?
No. Nothing, no.
I want to hold you up too long here too, so we'll see what happens. All right. But here's how the last question goes, and either one of you can go first. But given what COVID has done, obviously, I know you guys got a little sick right there, but looks like he came out better and stronger, and he's still kicking ass out there with the Luddites UK. But for those musicians and people who've been impacted by COVID or dealing with anything else in their lives, like addictions or anything else, What's their message of hope? And if you want to share any advice, would you give to those people as they try to move forward with their lives?
I'd say you've got to be true to yourself, and music's a passion. So good, bad, and indifferent, you stick through it. Addictions, like being addicted to alcohol, it took me an awful long time personally to recognise that I was addicted to alcohol. I kind of gave myself excuses why I drank too much, yeah, and why I took too many drugs. And over time, I realised that my life was better when I was not drinking or not taking drugs. That my life was a lot better, a lot less complicated. And there's always light at the end of the tunnel. That's true. I lost 7 people 2 years ago who drank themselves to death. Those people wanted to stop drinking. They wanted to. I know they wanted to. But unfortunately, they weren't convinced in their own mind that they could do it. What's the worst thing you can do is try, fail, but then try again, and try again. And keep trying. With your music, with your addictions, keep trying. Never give in. That's my advice.
My advice, certainly for music, is not dissimilar to Dave's. It's do what you do, but do it with honesty. Don't do what you do with any thoughts of an audience in mind, ever. Be true to thyself. You've got to love it. You're creating for yourself, really, because wherever it comes from, and I don't know. I mean, the way we write is in lots and lots of different ways, and you can talk about inspiration striking, or you can talk about a muse or whatever it is. But ultimately, wherever it comes from, out there, just channel that with honesty. Complete honesty, really. It's about being true to yourself, and who knows what will happen, but just keep doing it, because anybody who is a musician, if you stop playing music, that's actually quite unhealthy for you. I think you have to do it. There's a drive to do it, to be able to feel okay in yourself. So just stick at it, but always coming from a place of honesty. With regards to people with, whether it be addiction or mental health issues or whatever else it might be, talk and share, and ask for help, because people will help. People want to help. There are people that can help, no matter what it might be. Again, here I come back to communities and the strength of communities. And that doesn't have to be a physical community. It could be online communities. I've sponsored a few people into sobriety over the years. Honesty comes into that as well, but it's honesty with yourself rather than honesty with another person. But reach out and talk, because there are so many people that you can talk to who love to help. And that way lies salvation, I think. So you've got a voice, use it, tell people how you're feeling, tell people what's wrong, and hopefully you'll find people who won't actually talk back to you, but they will listen to what you're talking about, and very often that's enough. We always say a problem shared is a problem halved. So never be afraid to talk honestly about how you're feeling. Most people say, "Hi, how are you doing?" and your automatic response is, "Yeah, I'm good." But you might not be good. So say you're not good. Say you're not good, and say why you're not good. And then instead of keeping it all churning around inside of you, which is bad for you, you're beginning to bring it out, and then you can maybe start finding your way towards some sort of solution for whatever it might be. And to revisit, another another trope that we were just discussing earlier, more often than not, it will be down to fear of some sort that's caused whatever has subsequently ended up happening to you. So that's my bit of advice for what it's worth.
Spoke like a bunch of true prodigies. All right. And thank you all so much for what you do right there. It really does mean a lot. So, hey, boys, we share my podcast right here. Boy, oh boy, we just shy of about 2 hours actually right now. So it's probably about 8 o'clock your time now, or 7.
We're looking at Globe.
Quarter to 8.
Yeah, quarter to 8. Early days. Early days.
I'll need to get him fed now, or he'll start getting nasty again.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. So, but we have reached the end of my podcast right here. And would you guys like to throw in any shout outs? Do any final words before we close?
I'm going to say hi to a few people. So, Stratification Music, Sirius Blu-ray, Outback Jude, Nick Choda, Whiskey Club. There's going to be various others there that I really should be shouting out to, but I've completely forgotten. But to everybody who's given us loads of support, certainly over the last year, I'll include you in that as well, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a shout out from us.
Yeah.
From me.
Yeah. Thank you to everybody who's helped us and put up with us and whatever else.
Tolerating us.
Tolerated us. Yeah, that's the word.
Tolerated our dirty music for the longest time. So yeah. All right. And just real quick, what streaming platforms and I guess other social media you guys on, so they can check you out, hit you up, and listen to your music?
Yeah, it's all on Spotify and all of them really.
All digital platforms. Yeah.
It is on all digital platforms.
Yeah.
But if anybody wants to download, I always say Bandcamp is the one, because they keep a far smaller proportion of what the buyer pays than Spotify and the rest of them, because they keep our arses in rags, don't they? Spotify get about enough for a chip bussy every now and then, but that's about it. But Bandcamp is the one for downloading for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. And to close, I like this. Everyone, my guest today was Nick and Dave, hailing from the UK. They are Luddites, UK. So learned a good amount of history today here too, as well as everything else, especially what they do in the community. So keep doing what you're doing. If you are struggling, these boys are here to help. That's what the punks are here to do. So get your double horns up, and also give you the 2 thumbs up there too. So, all right. You all stay safe. And I know it's a little late, but Merry Christmas nonetheless, and Happy New Year. And God bless you all. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Cheers.
Stay tuned, y'all.
All right.